After nearly 3 years of waiting, the final piece for my Hutch Trick Star reissue build is finally here. My Hutch Western H Freestyle stem has arrived, and I can't wait to get it installed. And while we're at it, we're also going to dive deep into a step-by-step tutorial on setting up an ACS rotor. So yeah, welcome back to the nostalgic neighborhood. For those of you who are new here, let me give you a quick rundown. The Hutch Trick Star was the bike that I always dreamed of as a kid, but it was just always out of reach. And even with adult money, finding a vintage one in good condition is just way too expensive. And so back in 2021, when Hutch announced that they were going to be doing a reissue of the frame and fork sets, I totally got in on it. The frame set and handlebars all arrived well over a year ago, and I've been waiting on that Western H Freestyle stem ever since. And after countless delays, I got sick of waiting, and so I went ahead and built this up this past spring with this GT Repop faux mallet stem as a placeholder. And now that the Western H Freestyle stem is here, I am so excited to finally get this bike built up the way that I had originally envisioned it a couple of years ago. I think I mentioned this in the build video, but ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted an ACS rotor. And by the time I finally got a bike that was worthy of one, the Odyssey Gyro had replaced it as the standard, and I'd kind of missed the boat. And I understand that the Gyro is far superior in braking performance, but for me, the ACS rotor is far superior in nostalgia, and this bike build here is all about the nostalgia for me. After the build video, I had some people ask if I'd consider doing a more detailed rotor setup guide, and since I'm gonna have to take it all apart when I swap the stems, I figured I could go ahead and do that here too. Before we pull everything apart, I wanted to point out a couple of things about the rotor setup. In addition to the rotor itself, there are three main components that you need to consider. The first are the cable stops. The bottom one here is integrated into the bearing cup of your headset, and you can get ones from ACS like this one here, or on eBay you can sometimes find NOS ones from Yoga too. They're cheaper, but I think the ACS ones look a lot better. But yeah, you just press in the cup into the head tube, just like you would a regular headset bearing cup. Okay, and then you have the upper brake cable stop. You've got two options here. The best option is to get a stem that has an integrated cable stop that allows the wire to pass through it, like this GT one here, or the Hutch Freestyle stem that we're replacing it with. Or you can pick up an adapter that attaches to the stem below the quill stem wedge bolt here, and you can get one of those from Pork Chop BMX for around $9. The next thing that you need to know is that the cable that attaches to the bottom of the rotor for the rear brake, it doesn't use the same NARP end that a regular brake cable does. You need a cable that was designed for road bike brakes where the NARP end is much smaller, like this one here. I picked up a pack of these on Amazon for a few bucks, so no worries there. You just need to make sure that you have one when you're ready to do the install. Oh yeah, the tools. Since I'm not removing the headset itself, I'll just point out what we'll be using for the stem, the rotor, and the brakes. And we'll use a 9/16" crescent wrench for the wedge bolt, 10mm crescent wrench for the anchor nut that's on the rotor, and then we'll use an 8mm where the cable is attached to the brake arms, and then 6mm Allen key for the stem cap that holds the handlebars, and then some cable or wire cutters. Okay, let's go ahead and remove the brake cables. We'll take off the handlebars, and then we'll pull out the old stem. The rotor. I'm basically going to follow these instructions that were included with my NOS headset bearing cup. I scanned this into a PDF and I loaded it onto my Google Drive. I'll link to it in the description below if you'd like a copy for yourself. And yeah, the first page here, it points out that you need the stem shaft to be at least 3.5 inches long below the head section here, so that you can have at least 1.5 inches for the rotor travel and still have at least 2 inches locked into the steering tube here. And it also shows you how to pop off the upper headset cup and then install the rotor specific one if you're adding it to an already built up bike. Okay, to make sure that we have the 1.5 inches for the rotor travel on the stem here, I measured out 1.5 inches and then I marked it with a little bit of a Sharpie. That way when I insert the stem, I'll go right exactly just slightly past that line here and we'll have it in the right spot. And then we'll lubricate the stem with a little bit of light oil or grease in my case so that the rotor can easily slide up and down the shaft here. We'll slide the rotor back on. Okay, so then we're going to slide the stem into the steering tube here, and I'm just going to drop it until you can just barely not see that line anymore that I drew on there. And then I'm just going to eyeball this to get it parallel with the wheel, and then we'll come back once we've got the handlebars and everything set up. We'll just make sure that it's exactly parallel with the wheel here, but this will at least hold it in place while we work. Okay. Okay, real quick before we put the handlebars back on, I've got two tasks to take care of real quickly. One is the stem itself is ready for the rotor. It's got the hole pre-drilled and threaded, but it does not come with one of these barrel adjusters. So I picked one of these up on a pork chop or something like that for like $1 or $2. And so I'll thread that in here. And then also before I put the handlebars on, I'm gonna go ahead and put some grease on all of these bolts that hold down the cap on the stem. Okay. Okay, handlebars will be like that, so let's go ahead and drop those on. And even there. So I think this is parallel on all planes. Okay, I'm not going to go super tight because I want to make sure I get those at the right angle, so I'll come back and dial all that in later. Next up, we'll get the front brake set up. This is the standard POTS mod, so we'll just breeze through these steps on the video here. Okay. Front brake is good. Okay, now we're ready for the rear brake, and back to the instructions here. It says that for the upper cable here that you should remove the wire here and then go ahead and cut the cable housing to length, which I've already done. So in our case here, we're just gonna go ahead and hook up the wire to the lever and then send this down through here to the anchor nut, and we'll pass it through, but we won't tighten it just yet. So we've got our barrel adjuster there. This down, and we're going to go right through this anchor. There we go. So just like that. And so like I said, we'll come back and we'll tighten this up at the end. That'll be the last step. So now we'll work on the rear cable. Okay, so for the next step, I'm not sure why it kind of has it in this order, but it tells you to send this cable through here and then go ahead and cut your housing to the correct length and then slide it through. In my case, I went ahead, I've already got the housing still attached from before, so I'm not going to mess with that. So you would do that step, no big deal. And then basically, this is a Gen 2 rotor. Gen 1 rotor, you'll need to take this all apart if you're installing a fresh cable. Hook it up before you slide it onto the stem here. But the Gen 2 and later, they actually have a little hole here that has a cap, and you can kind of go through here and line through, and then you can just send it all the way down. So that's a real nice feature for Gen 2. And I'm going to go ahead and just send it down into the brake cable housing as I push it through. And again, this will only work if you have one of these types of cables with this like road bike NARP on it. If you use the normal one that goes up here, it won't actually pass through this hole and you'll be stuck. Okay, so that's through. So I can pull that tight over here and we are spinning freely. Okay, for this, you're going to want to have the levers compressed up to the rims here, just like before. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this old shoelace here. They make a tool called the fourth hand that you can buy from like Park Tool or whatever, but it's, I don't know, it's probably like 40 or 50 bucks, but if you're not doing this regularly, I think this shoestring hack kind of works just fine. But yeah, if you were doing this more regularly, I think I would definitely buy that fourth hand tool. Tighten that on. So now my brake pads are fully compressed onto the rims here. We can send this through. This nut back here is also 8 millimeters. So we're just going to tighten it here. So that's nice and tight. Okay, so the next step here is the key to get the proper final adjustment here. And the secret is keeping the brake pads compressed onto the rims here on the back. And then up here on the front, you pull the tension out of the wire here, and then you crank that anchor nut down. Again, that's a 10 millimeter nut up here. And that should leave everything with the right tension to go ahead and pull the brake calipers here from the back. So let's go ahead and release the shoelace here. Okay, so our wheel is spinning freely. And we're good. That feels good up there. Okay, so the last little adjustment here from the instructions is that on the barrel adjuster here, you can unscrew that just a little bit, and that will bring the rotor up so that it's not exactly sitting on the top nut there on your headset, and then you should be ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and trim off the rest of the cables, and then I think we're good to go. All right, let's go ahead and get the excess grease off of here because we are good to go. And that's it, the rotor is installed and perfectly tuned. Okay, so after nearly 3 years of waiting and almost a lifetime before that, here it is, dudes, the Hutch Trick Star in all its glory, complete with the Western H Freestyle stem and a perfectly tuned ACS rotor. Other than saying it's absolutely beautiful, there's not a whole lot else to say about the Western H Freestyle stem here from a review perspective, other than the finish itself is free of imperfections. The chrome plating is spotless, it just looks beautiful. At $300, it was quite a bit of a splurge compared to the cheap GT mallet stem that I had on there before, but this was my one chance to get it right, and I don't regret it. Thanks for joining me on this journey to complete my Hutch Trick Star build. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed for more BMX and skate content, more nostalgic trips down memory lane, and then of course all things 80s. So thanks for watching and keep riding. And then, oh yeah, here's a video that YouTube thinks that you should watch next.